Hey, good morning. Lecture 4. Are there any questions on the previous material or anything related to class? So if you are not yet on Piazza, you should be. I sent an announcement yesterday. So I posted homework 1 during 1 week from today. I posted a draft of homework 2. I'm still working on that draft slightly. That will be due in 7 plus 6 days from now, so on Wednesday. So the truth is that I want homeworks in general to be due on Tuesday, but due to the Martin Luther King vacation, we are not able to have the review class, the review session on that Monday. Okay, so I made the first homework due Thursday, then the next one is due Wednesday, and then it will be due on Tuesday from then on. Okay. We are going, so the TA kindly agreed to do review sessions. Is the TA here? I don't know. But the TA kindly agreed to do review sessions on Monday afternoons. Okay, I posted the time and the room. The room is Social Sciences 071, and the time is Monday afternoon. I think it was the best time in the doodle poll that we sent out. So I think this was something like 2:30 to 3:30 or 3:30 to 4:30. Or 3:40 to 4, something like that. Okay, actually I can tell you. I have the web page here. Hang on. So it's 3:30 to 4:40 on Mondays. Okay, the review session. And I haven't yet put the details on how to submit the assignment, but I will do that shortly. Okay, I just need to create the assignment where we can upload your homework. Okay. Are there any questions? So these initial assignments will be easy. I often, make some people unhappy in the class because I say, hey, the professor tells us to do this, but he hasn't really explained how to do that. This will be less toward the beginning of the class. It will be a little bit more toward the end of the class. So in general, you will need to be able to, to read and figure out things for yourselves. I will not be able to cover in class exactly everything you need to do for every homework. So these initial ones are easier, but they will get somewhat harder as time goes on. Okay? There is no question at all. Okay, are you finding the pace of last time too fast or too slow? Raise the hand for too fast. Raise the hand for too slow. So some people find it too slow. Okay, some too fast again. Nobody finds it too fast, so you should go faster. Okay, I'm not sure that this is a consensus because raise your hand if you think just right. Okay, that's the majority. Okay, fine. Then I continue to do it. The best way to slow me down and to get interesting information out of me is to ask questions. Okay, and it makes also my lecture much more fun for me as well. So let me find here and screen share. Okay, so let's see where we were. We designed this very simple bulletin board. Here is how it looks. I can click and I can add a post. Okay, if I click, this brings me to login. Actually, I don't know with what email. Oh, it's because I think this is what I used. Okay, and it brings me here to add a post. I can add a post and I can go back. Okay, very simple. How is this code written that generates the form? I want to just go a little bit more in detail over the post generation. So this is in the default controller. We wrote a method called add. Here it is. I posted all the code of this lecture on the web. So I try to always, you will find a page for every lecture in which I post all the material. I cannot promise to do it immediately because some days, like today, I have a complicated day with meetings, etc. I may get to do it tonight, but otherwise I do it tomorrow. But so there is this add method in which we add a post. We are building a form. And so far, the only thing I told you about a form is that is one of these things where users can type stuff. And now I want to tell you a little bit more how it is in HTML. Because Web2Py has these things that students love and hate that builds a lot of HTML for you automatically. So it's very handy, but you don't sometimes see enough of what goes on behind the hood, okay, under the hood. So we use this SQL form generator that is part of Web2Py, in which we pass it to the definition of a database table. This db.bboard is this table here, that bboard that we defined in db. One thing that you can do in Web2Py that I mentioned now is this. You see that there is this db object. We created it in db.py here. Okay, here it says db is equal to dal is database, I don't know, layer, database abstraction layer, I believe, okay? And so we create a database object here. One of the very nice things, Web2Py has two things that I really like. One is that you can, it has backends for many databases that exist, you know, SQL, Postgres, Google Data Store, and many more. And the other thing I really like is that you can actually use open at the same time as many databases as you like. So for example, so if we built a complicated application in which we use both of the Google Data Store, so for some type of data, and MySQL for some other type of data, I would say DB1 is equal to this, and DB2 is equal to that, perhaps, or maybe I would give them better names. But essentially, you can open a database connection and use as many of those as you want, and Web2Py doesn't really care. It doesn't come with a sort of predefined notion of, you know, this is our main database and that's it, and everything lives in it. It's very easy to switch from one to the other, okay? So, so here is where we created this DB object, okay? Here is where we created the table bboard, and when we created the frame, we simply, oops, sorry, it was in here, in default. And when we created a frame, sorry, I prefer to keep this window open too. When we created a frame, we simply, the form, we simply tell it, create it according to the fields of the table, okay? And in the table declaration, you can declare the fields, but also you can declare various attributes of the fields. And you can go read the documentation, but the most common are the default value, okay? The label, which is how it should appear to a user. You know that for us, a funny reason we couldn't call this field message because it was a reserved word for SQLite. So, but we can label them the way we want. So typically, once you define the database, fields have a certain label, have a certain name from the point of view of code. And you don't want to change that, of course. But if you decide that later that instead of name, it's better to tell people that this is, you know, first name or, you know, your nickname or whatever, you can change it via labels, okay? So labels give you this flexibility of breaking the connection between how you declare and how you use things. It's very handy. Then you can define whether fields are writable or readable when you create forms in the default way. And then, as we will see, we can define also two other types of things, which are, we can define how fields should be rendered in input or output. I'm not sure we will do it this time, but you can also define validators. So one of the things is this, you should always assume that what you get through the web is garbage, unless you know otherwise, okay? Meaning that you can, unlike in a normal program, when you write some function, you generally write both of the function, and most often you write the piece of code that calls that function, so that you are sort of sure that unless you do something silly, it's called in the right way. In the web, when you build one of these methods like default that will produce a form and then process it, you can never assume that the person is going to fill in a reasonable data. Okay, so either you are okay with the person putting in garbage, in which case you don't need to do any validation. But otherwise, you may want to try to validate that the field actually contains valid information before you accept it, okay? And you can do the validation by hand, and I will tell you later how to do that in a later lecture. Or you can use some Web2Py facility to help you. For example, For example, these tables here have an email, okay? And now I can write db bboard. So first of all, let me show you that right now I can put garbage here, like yada yada, okay? And the phone number is some phone number, and say like this is silly, okay? I can submit it, and this will just work, okay? So it's the last post. It doesn't give me the details, but it accepted my post and it stored the information, okay? So if I want to do some better validation, I can say that db bboard email requires is email. Okay, there is a set of validators, and in the homework I point you to it that are available. They are quite varied. You can validate that floating point numbers are in a certain range. Emails are actually emails. URLs are actually URLs. You can give regular expressions to check that strings have the format you expect, and you can do a bunch of similar things. Okay, so there is a whole list of them, and if those are not enough, you can define your own. Another one is this. Suppose that we want to have the categories in this bulletin board. Okay, so how would you do it? So you category, yeah. I'm doing by memory. I hope I don't do it wrong. Okay. So there is a tradition in Python that constants are in uppercase. So what are our categories for posts? I don't know, like for sale is one type. Another type is wanted, and another type is what? Mish. Okay, fine, that's enough. Okay, so I add now a category. Hoping that it won't tell me that it's a reserved word, I guess. We'll see. And then I see db bboard category requires is equal to is in set, and this I admit I don't remember it all the time how it works, so I also show you where I'm fishing it out of. So of course now you would tell me the Web2Py book. Yes, that's right. So if you go to the Web2Py book, there is forms and validators. That's what we are doing. Okay, we are creating forms and validators, and so we can go down to validators, text format validators, other validators. I don't know. So is match, is length, is URL, is something else, is date in range, is date is this or that. There is a lot of them, but the one we want is in set. Okay, and it's very simple actually. We can simply give it the list, and the other parameters are optional. So let's try to use that. Is in set category, and I think that's all we need to do. Okay, so let's see whether this works and what it does. Here, so I add a new post. Okay, and now we see that category is a drop-down field that is pre-filled in. Okay, so when you define requirements, when you define a db.table.field.requires is equal to something, this does two things essentially. It validates the data you put in, but it can also modify how the field looks like for the user input. Okay, so in this case, essentially, not only it validates that you that the value you put in is one of those values, but it also tells the form to please use a drop-down list for these values. And if you want to have a default, you can do it so that it's not blank at the beginning. Okay, so if I wanted the default to be Mish, I would read the documentation here. Okay, you see 0 is so how do I checking validation, dictionaries and tuples is in set and tagging, complicated. I think I'm not so sure, but let me try. Okay, I kind of forgot how to do that. But hey, where did my code window go? Oh, here. Okay. Maybe it's enough that I say bboard category default is equal to niche, right? And bboard category required is equal to true. This means the person cannot leave it blank. Let's see whether this would work. Sorry. And no, it will still let me put it empty. Okay, so there is a way to eliminate the empty, but I don't want to chase it now because I remember that every time I try to remember, it's complicated. I can post it on Piazza later. Okay, fine. Okay, now if I look at the post in HTML, this is how the post looks like. Sorry, let me. Okay. I prefer to have this in a separate window. Okay. So here is the form. Here is where the form begins. Okay, everything from here to here is the form. Okay, so the form has a method that is post. You can, in theory, do forms that have a method that is equal to get. These would be forms. What you are deciding is how do you ship back the user input to the server, right? If you use post, there will be a dictionary of variables. Variables is equal to value. Variable is equal to value. And this is shipped as the body of the post. So the post can have a body, and it's done to send large amounts of information. This is why posts almost invariably use post. Sorry, the forms use post all the time. It's too early in the morning also for me, okay? Now, I could put get, but then I would have the problem that everything is encoded in the command line. And that has two problems with it. One is that there is a limit of length, and there is this annoying URL encoding that becomes required. The other problem that might or might not be a problem is that everything that the user typed will become part of the URL. When this goes into the server, the URL is almost invariably logged into many places. Okay, so this means that the user input now appears in many places logged. This might be fine with you, but it's something to keep in mind. Usually you want to be a bit careful about exactly what you log and what information you leave out. Anyway, then the structure of the form, you see that it's like a labels value, labels value, labels value. Okay, this is no, I don't think I want to restart Firefox. This is a table. Okay, this is how it's lined up. It's inside the table structure that has a body, that has a table row with ID bboard name row. This is bboard is the name of the table. This is name because I'm asking for the username, and this row is just a suffix. Okay, so there is this row, and it contains this thing. It contains TD means table data. It's one of these cells. Okay, so when you make a table, the whole table has essentially TR elements for a whole row, and then each one of these cells is a TD. Okay, that you need to start and close the TD element in HTML. Okay, so that's how roughly a table works. So this is let's look at the row for name. It contains a data table that contains a label that, sorry, I have to open it, a label that says name. Okay, so that's where the name comes from. Sorry, That's where the name comes from. Okay, it's here. It's in this TD element that contains a label that contains a name. Now you may think, why do things so crazily? I mean, what do you need this label thingy? And the truth is that you don't need it a lot. But in HTML, the way things work is that you put some elements that don't have any visual effect because you want to be able to attach a class to them. This is, you see, label, it has an ID, and it has all this information. These will be needed essentially by Web2Py if you want to add stuff to that name. If you suppose you want to write some code on the side that we will later learn how to write, for example, that says, when the user hovers over labels of my table, I want to do something very special, So the label fields will be the ones you can observe for when the user hovers on them, and then you can figure out which ID. The ID is a unique identifier for an HTML element. And so if you ask the label of the ID, you will know over which definition the user is hovering, okay? Let me do a small parenthesis on HTML elements. So there is a tag name, okay? And this begins it, and at the end you have a, tag name to close, / tag name to close. And in the middle you can have other stuff, okay? So, but there are two things that you can put here that are widely useful to know. One is that you can say ID is equal to blank, okay? So the IDs of fields are meant to be unique document-wise, okay? So you need to choose names that are unlikely to be used anywhere else. So you don't say ID is equal to like input field. You say ID is equal to input field for name of this table or whatever this is what the line in the code is doing. ID is equal to bboard name label. This is unlikely to be repeated anywhere else. And then you can have a class which is equal to I don't know, like button, okay? As we had before. Actually, it was btn. So the class can instead be shared among multiple elements. So the difference between these two is essentially this is a unique identifier of a field, and it's basically used to tie code to that particular piece of the web page individually there. Okay, the class denotes a kind of element that can be repeated. And it's used both to define how the element should look like, and we will see that later. For the moment in this class, I'm basically doing in this lecture, I'm basically doing on the behavior, not on the styling. So that you can attach looks to the class. Okay, you can attach style to the class, how it looks like. And if you like, you can also attach behavior that is general. For example, suppose you want to implement a game of battleships. So that you have this 10 by 10 grid, and when you click on one of these squares, you want the square to go like wing, and you want to capture where you clicked. Then one easy way to implement it is that I would invent in HTML the most amorphous tag is called div. Div just means hey, rectangular area. So I could, for example, make every square have inside it, I mean, maybe I would put the squares in a table, but every square I would implement it with a div. ID is equal to something like box 37. So the ID would tell me which square that is. If you click on it, if you click on an element, it will be easy for me to fish out which element it is. So if I give IDs that are unique, that tell me which element it is, I'm in good shape, right? And then I would say something like class is equal to I don't know, battleship square. Okay, I can invent any name I want, and this will be used for the styling. And then I don't know what to put here. Okay, that depends on how you implement the game, but then it was the leave. Okay, so that would be a possible implementation. And so you can in the code say, hey, whenever the user clicks on something of the class of this class, please give me the ID of the element that was clicked. These will be kind of things that we are able to do later. I introduce them now just to explain you why this code that in principle should be simple looks like a bunch of, you know, mess. I mean, it's not really mess, but it looks way more than it needs to be in order to display the form. It is true, it's way more than it needs to be, because it has all these easy classes and IDs that enable you to figure out, if you were to add code to this page, to how to refer to the elements of the page itself. Okay, we are not using it now, but it's there for us. Fine, so this is the label, and then there is, in the next TD, what is it? Well, hey, a moment. Oh, yeah, it's because this simply says Luca because it's not an input field. Okay, I cannot edit the name, if you remember. If I look at the phone, okay, the phone has, again, a label that says phone, and a TD that is an input field. You see this thing? Oh no, what did I do? Boo. Where am I? Oh, okay, nothing. I'm simply here. Okay, so is this big enough? Maybe not, eh? Hang on. These input fields are the places where you can actually type stuff. Okay, for some kind of historical reasons, the input fields are the places where you can type stuff in a single line. And you know, there is another thing called the text area that is used if you need to type an entire paragraph. Okay, so I don't know why they have different names. They could have done it with inputs with different parameters to them. But essentially, you see that there is an input that has an ID again. It has a class. Okay, the class will tell it essentially how it should be rendered again, what type of things the people are expected to type into it. Okay, value is the initial value. Okay, and the name is phone. Okay, the name is very important, actually. Is super important, and now I tell you why. Okay, and this causes the input. So essentially, the form is the beginning and end of the form that defines the method and the action. The action, it would be the URL to which the form is sent, and the hash means send it to the same page where you actually read it. Okay. So the form defines where to send the information and contains whatever you want. You know, it should not. It may not only contain the fields where the user can actually type, but it contains also all the other stuff that is used to generate, you know, how the thing looks like. But sprinkled inside this form are the input fields. The input fields are the places where the user types. Every input field has a value, which is the initial value, and has a name. How is the name used? Okay, so if I go back here and I type that my phone is this. Actually, let's put a number we can recognize. So something like this. Okay, so if I put this, I don't know, and let me fill the rest like. If I do this, when I submit this form, how does the browser receive? How does the server receive it? And this is important, okay? And the server receives it. Sorry, I need the code now. The server receives it in this way. So it will be sent to the same page where it came from. So it will be sent to the page add, okay? And here, there is request vars phone, and this is the content of the input with label phone. Okay, so it's in this variable. It's only that in this lecture I haven't told you how to use logging, so I won't be able to show it in a log. Okay, but I can write a sort of phone. Then I can say return dict form is equal to form, and well, okay, well, I guess it's already a string. So this is a bit of a silly trick, okay? But I'm essentially getting the phone and using the message the phone for when I submit the form. It's just to show you quickly that the phone actually is the way to get it, okay? So if I do that, if I submit the form now, this will get submitted to the same page where it came from, add. And you see in the message now we see the phone. So if you wonder, how the information goes from the browser to the server, it goes into a dictionary that is sent as the body of the post, and you can access the dictionary inside of the code, and this is widely useful, by saying request.vars.phone. This request.vars is explained in the chapter of Web2Py that is called I think it's called, what is it called? The fundamentals or basics or whatever. I think it's chapter 4, perhaps. So a request is essentially a container variable that tells you a lot of stuff that comes from the user request, that comes from the user browser to the server, okay? So there are a lot of fields. There will be information on the cookies, information on whether you are logged in, information on this, information on that, and if you are submitting a form, there is also all the content that was submitted, okay? Great. Now, let's okay, let's backtrack a moment. So great. At this point, I told you how a form works a bit more in detail, and I want to do something a little bit more sophisticated with this website. So, for example, there is no way in which you can actually display a post. What I want to do now is the following. If I'm here, I want to add here a link that enables you to read it, okay? Every individual post. I don't want to expand them here because they could be large. I want to put a link on the side of each one that enables you to read it. So how do I do that? Well, I'm giving to the view the list of all the posts, and this looks fine actually. I don't think we should change that. And I'm rendering every post in this loop. Okay, I'm saying I loop over the posts, and so I say post by pname posted on pdate. And here I would need, before I close this thing here, I would need to say sort of, read. But this read needs to look like a link, okay? So I like to generate these links via Web2Py rather than, sorry, let me close. Via Web2Py rather than via pure HTML. So I want to say this has to be an anchor, okay? The text of the anchor has to be read, okay? And the place where it leads me has to be a URL that is index. So the first parameter of the URL method is always the controller that you want this to direct to. This will be directed to index.py, okay? The second argument will be the function view, okay? Now, the problem is this. I cannot simply tell you to go to index view because I need to tell you somehow, which post it has to view, right? So that when you go there, you can read that specific post. So how do I do? I can add to a URL a list of arguments, okay? Which in this case, I will put it to contain simply p.id, so the ID of the post. One more closed. Okay. If I do this and I reload this page, aside from the fact that I missed the closed parenthesis, okay, but let me add it. Just aesthetically, it's not nice. But this is what I get. And if I inspect this element, I see that the URL looks like this: bboard index view 1. Okay, so essentially the format is there is the controller, there is the function, okay, and then there is argument 0, argument 1, and as many arguments as I want. So arguments are passed on the URL. And you may wonder, why do I need to pass it in the URL? I could also do it in this way, for example. I could also go to controller function and then say, as a parameter, I could say, for example, ID is equal to 7, okay? If I wanted to do it that way, I could, okay? And I will show you now how, just for curiosity, because it might be useful for you to do it. So the other way to do it, let me copy this read line and write it the other way around, okay? It would be, instead of saying that the arguments is p.id, I can say vars is equal to a dictionary, okay? And now I have to produce a dictionary here. That says, for example, id p.id, okay? So I can do these. I can do these, sorry, and if I go here and I reload this page, now I get 2 reads, okay? And the second read will be in this way. So what's the difference between these two, okay? Not so much, but the main difference is this. This is a bit nicer to bookmark. And if you want to read the posts, this will give you a slightly nicer URL if you want to email that post to somebody else. I mean, this is a consideration, right? One thing that you may want to do is when you design your site is, think at what content should be shareable and make sure that, the URL contains all the parameters that if I send it to somebody else would cause that other person to be able to land there correctly. That's very useful for sharing, okay? Modulo that, there is not so much of a difference actually between the two. So it would work also in that way. Web2Py encourages, essentially, if you have I think the tradition is this. It's like in Python. In a Python function, you have some arguments that are compulsory, and some arguments that are by name and optional, okay? So think of the things you put as arguments as the compulsory part of the arguments of a function call, and think of the parameters that you pass in this way as, the optional stuff. This syntax is very useful if you can have optionally a large number of options, but in practice you would use only 1 or 2 every time. No, that's the perfect use for this syntax. Now, however, we go on developing using that syntax, okay? So, I go in my HTML, I'll remove this line. Yeah, maybe if you yawn, try to do it more silently so that I don't get to yawn as well. Okay. So, def view. So this is a view method. View a post. Now I have to fish out the post. The easy way to do it is this. So there are many syntaxes. One would be to say to do post is equal to db bboard id is equal to request vars. So to request args of 0. Why do I say of 0 instead of 0? This is a stupid difference, but it's important. If I say this way, if the argument is not present, I get an error. Web2Py is kind enough to give me this alternative syntax. If the argument is not there, I would get none. The Python value none. It's useful. Okay? So I can do these, and then I can select these elements. And if I select, I don't get a single element. I get a list. Because whenever I send a query, Web2Py for uniformity gives me back a list, not a single element. Okay, so then I would need to get the first element of this thing, and I could do it this way. So this is a possible syntax, and I leave it commented it out just for you for reference. Okay, but there is a shorthand that people use all the time, which is the following: P is equal to db bboard request args 0. Okay. And what to do if this is none? Well, I send you back. Or redirect URL default index. Okay? So how does this work? Well, it works in this way. If request args 0 is not none, it's actually an ID. And if this returns to me the post, this part of the OR is true. And Python uses lazy evaluation for logical conjunctions with OR and AND, right? If it says A or B, once it knows that A is true, that is non-zero or non-null, Python is satisfied and will not do the B part, okay? So if you can actually fish out the post, this is the value of this expression and will be passed to B. If your search comes out empty, either because the argument 0 is not there, or because you have given me an ID that is not in the table, okay? So if the search comes out empty, the second part will be evaluated, and this will cause actually Web2Py to generate a return to default index. So this shorthand is a little bit crazy, I agree. Is not so clean, but is so widely useful that I think it's good that you know it. Is the way to fish out some data from there. Now we have fished out the data that we have specified in the URL, and I need to show it, to display it. How do I do it? Well, I can do it in this way. Form is equal to SQL form and the DB board. So if I do this generates a form for insertion. But I can say record is equal to P. This says initially take the values from P, and I can say read only is equal to true. So this SQL form takes a few options, okay? These are some of the important ones, okay? And then I can simply do return dict form is equal to form, okay? So that's all it takes in order to view a form. Now I need to build the view for this. So I take the view for add, okay? And I cut and paste it. So I need a new file, and the file is view.html. The name has to match. Then I get it open in this silly way, but I open it text editor, okay? Not add a post, but I don't know, post, whatever. Not very much full of fantasy, okay? But this should work unless I made some mistake, which is of course possible. So let's try it. Now, let me reload this page. Okay, now we see only the proper links. If I click here, invalid control index view. So I defined the wrong URL. It should have been default view, not index view, right? So let me fix it. I think that here is not index view, is default view. Okay. So now that I fix it, let me close this for the moment. I can go back. I can regenerate. I reload to regenerate the links. Okay. And now if I click here, I see this. Now this is not very pretty. Okay. Why is it not very pretty? Well, for many reasons, but the ID shouldn't really be displayed, right? So, and to eliminate the display of the ID, I can go back in the code, I can go to the way the table is defined, and just say db board bb message, no, bb, sorry, the ID readable is equal to false. I mean, people shouldn't be bothered with the idea of fields. Okay, that's essentially an internal thing. So if I do this, okay, fine, a little bit better. Okay. Now, if you wanted to fish out and do your own layout for the information, you can do it very easily, because you can you could go in the code and once you have the record P, I can write it as a comment, but p.name would contain the name of the poster. Yeah, I forgot to change the color of comments, sorry. But essentially, once you have one of these elements you read from the database, if you say p.field name, you can access the particular field name, okay? So now we can add, we can view, if we wanted to implement a delete method, it would be very easy, okay? So just for the example, this is a read, okay? We can implement it by simply cut and pasting the read and saying delete, okay? And here we can go to default delete, okay, with the same arguments. So this is done. Now here we need to make the controller for delete. Def delete deletes a post. Okay. Now, what can I do here? Let me think a moment. Maybe I want you to be able to delete only the things that you have written. Okay. So this can be done a little bit better, and I leave it for you for the homework. By in here, you would need to add this link only if you actually need it, only if you are actually the author. Okay, because it's stupid to give people a link, delete, and then tell me, hey, sorry, but you can't actually delete it. If you can determine before that you cannot do it, the link should not be there. Okay. But now at least we want to verify that you can only delete if you are actually the owner. So how do we do it? Well, first of all, we fish out the record we want to delete in the usual way as before. Okay. Then we say if p dot let me see how I defend the table, so I don't want to have painted myself in a corner. Okay, I have a field that is called user ID, right? And that will contain my user ID. So now I can say if p.userid is different, so I need to be logged in to use this method, okay? Auth requires login. If p.userid is different from auth user ID, okay, then I can say session.flash as a message to the user. I can say like not authorized, not a very smart message, okay? And redirect URL default index. Okay. Otherwise, I can just delete it immediately. I could add for a confirmation form, but I don't want to spend the time now. Okay, so let me just delete it, nuke it. So db, the syntax for delete, there may be a shorthand, but I don't remember. So let me write it in the sort of extended way. So this is a query that will find all the elements of the bulletin board that have the right ID. There should be only one, okay? And this will delete it, okay? And once you delete it, I can redirect URL of default index, okay? This works. And I don't even need to make a view because this is not going to display anything actually. So I'm done. I'm done with this. So let me see how this would work. So I go here. Okay, fine. Now there are all these deletes. I'm the author of all of them, so I should be able to delete it. Let's see if it blows up. Wow, it works. Okay. Now there is one thing that I don't like very much, and that I would I would encourage you to do. So essentially, because the question is this: these delete links. I am doing something really bad. Did I tell you at some point that you should never have side effects with a get, but only with a post? So now I have essentially violated my own rule. Okay. So I'm essentially taking an action with the side effects on a GET request. So if Google crawls this website, it will really delete all my content. Okay. Well, not quite, because Google wouldn't be logged in, I guess, so it would not be able to delete the posts. But this is still very, a practice that I usually don't like. So there is one way in which you transform these things into buttons that actually create a post, and there are ways to do that. Okay. But at least I want to give you some solution that makes it a little bit better. So what I want is that these links are not the same. So you would be able to bookmark the link that deletes post number 5. I want that these links essentially are there one use only. So at least if they have side effects, I want to make incredibly sure that nobody can guess however to get these links unless a logged in user like me that has the right to do that happens to land on that particular page. Okay, so I wanted to tell you now, how do I check that you're not using just any link, but you're using a link that was created by the web page where we are supposed to be coming from? This is a very important security check. Okay, so here people are logged in, but the fact is that imagine that to give you how important this is, imagine that I'm logged in both here and in Facebook. Okay, I'm logged into this site, but I'm also logged in Facebook. And someone like you, sorry, you just happen to be sitting here, but you want to play a joke on me, and you send me a link saying, you know, hey, read this news about, I don't know, the drought in California, and you give me a link, and that link that says drought in California actually contains the URL to delete one of my posts in this bboard. What do you think will happen? You think, well, that link is on Facebook, so I wouldn't be able to log in here. False. Okay? When a browser accesses a domain, regardless of where the link came from that you click upon, if your browser accesses the bboard domain, if the browser has a cookie stored for the bboard domain, it will be sent along with the request. Okay? So this means that if he really plays this joke on me by saying, you know, drought in California with a link that, for example, erases all my mail on Gmail, or, you know, or deletes a post on the bboard, etc., this will actually do it. He will result as logged in into my site. Okay? So this might appear wildly crazy, and it is a success. Okay? Browsers were invented, and these cookies were invented before really people were using browsers to develop web apps. Okay? So now some things look crazy to us. I mean, they're only partially crazy because sometimes you want to have the site open in 2 different tabs, and you want that when you click on one way, I don't know, but in general, it's somewhat crazy that URL coming from another site can cause cookies that go. But it has, yeah. Anyway, it has its uses, because maybe you know, that link on Facebook was to access my post for reading. But the point is that this get now is there for writing, for deleting it. Okay, so I want essentially to make it impossible for him to be able to guess the right links that could cause me to delete my own content. By the way, this is not theoretical. Some widely used email web apps were attacked in this way. You know, there were some widely used email web apps that had a very simple link that led to the configuration page, and a fairly simple way from there to say, please add this forwarding address to your so that all your email is also forwarded to this address. And then people would craft some ads or some posts on social networks so that people would click there, okay, and they wouldn't quite understand what was happening, but essentially the forwarding was added to their email system, and so these scammers got all their email. And from there, the financial information, and, you know, from there they did, you know, identity theft and so on and so forth. Okay, so we want to make sure that every get link that happens to have a side effect is not easily guessable. And the way we do it is this. So here, when we generate the link, I guess is here, we don't only say this. So this, but we say user signature is equal to true. Okay, so this says, please produce the link, but also add a signature that is a encrypted hash of the user ID and the session. So that will be valid only for me in this particular session. Okay, it will be valid as long as I logged in. Sessions expire maybe after half an hour, 24 hours, but it's not going to be valid forever even. Okay, so if I do this, the link in the index will look like, you see it displayed below, right? It's a bit small, but it contains the signature is equal, and then there is a long random number. Okay, so that signature will change if I log in and log out again, because my session would change. Okay, now this is not enough, of course, but we need in the in the delete method to also check that the signature is correct. And so maybe the TA can check that I don't say sillinesses, but I think it requires signature. Signature required or requires a signature? I don't know. Which one of the two? Can you tell me? Yeah. Sorry. I guess I can also, you know, try, do it by trial and error. Let's see. No. Dot require? Require or requires? Plural. I mean, the third person of, yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's see whether this works. Okay, yeah, this works. At least nobody would be able to guess those links. Now you may be thinking, you know, this is a bit weak security, you know, because all the security is on a random number. But essentially, all your security is due to difficulty to guess random numbers. Okay, the reason you are logged in Gmail and I cannot be you on Gmail is because your session cookie contains a big random number. When Google receives it, it will say, this big random number, let me look it up, and then finds in all your user data and it finds your identity. If I were able to guess random numbers of your cookies, I would be able to impersonate everybody. So in a sense, security is never further away than a lucky guess. You just make this lucky guess incredibly unlikely, okay? Okay, great. Now, the last thing I wanted to tell you is how do you delete a post? Well, no, how do you edit a post? Well, that's easy now. So I don't need to make the thing encrypted. So I can just, I mean, I don't need to make it secure, but I can say edit. This is a sort of silly implementation, right? You should have put the edit link also when you are viewing the post, etc. But you know, never mind. I'm just doing this to be fast, okay? Default edit. Okay, now I go back to the default controller. I take, for example, these. Okay, I create an edit method. So for editing, I need you to be logged in. Okay, so I'll check that. Sorry, I check that you're logged in. I also need to check that you are the owner of the post, right? So that you cannot edit somebody else's stuff. Okay, and this is done in this way. So at this point, I have a form, and the only difference is that I don't say any longer that it's read-only. It's a real form. Okay, and then I say simply if form.process updated. So where do I redirect after you edit a form? I think the best is to redirect it to a place where you can view it, just as an exercise, okay? So default view args is equal to p.id, okay? So this is a place where you can view a form, okay? And actually, that's all there is to it, I guess. And now I can essentially take this page, copy it, and call it edit because it's so similar. I can just copy it. Okay. Now I can sorry. Okay. And this should just work. Let's see. So now I get this edit link. I can click on it. Not authorized. Why? Not authorized. Why am I not authorized?
Before you put the ID.
Ah, great. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, there were things without the ID. Okay, so I can edit it. I cannot edit my name. I cannot edit the date posted, but I can edit the category good quality. Okay, and then I I submit these, and it's updated, and it shows me, it directs me to the place where it shows me. Okay, so this is essentially tells you the basics of how you can tie stuff together. Okay, and edit and insert data in a single table. So this is actually one of the most important lectures from the point of view of telling you the basics of how to get a farm to modify data or delete data and go from one place to the other, passing as argument um, uh, an indication of what you want to work on. Okay, so this is actually quite important. Any questions on this before I show you? There are various ways of doing stuff. This is the simple, this is sort of the manual way, and it's very important. And now I want to move on to show you a more sophisticated way in which we can get a nice table of all the posts be generated for us, that can do some of these things automatically for us. But I will first want to make sure that this is well understood. Any questions on these? I mean, I'll give you all the code, okay? But any questions on these? All clear so far? Kind of. If you have a question,
I just have to practice.
sorry?
I just have to practice.
Yeah. So homework one is very similar to these. I'm sorry, these initial homeworks will be a little bit on the easy side, but at least they will. It's essentially practicing on these. A very similar practice. It's about implementing a for sale place in which you can also label things as done. But the first homework is essentially trivial, I have to tell you. Well, maybe not. People get snagged into details sometimes. So, but now let me instead build something else. This index page, it's not really very nice. No. We can do it a little bit better than this. I would like to see a nice table with the names and the dates and something a little bit better done, with buttons that look like buttons to edit or delete or do whatever I want. Okay, so how do I do this? Well, before I do that, actually, git add dot git commit -a okay, fine. Now I can do that without losing what I did. So I want to define def index index 2, okay, not a name full of fantasy. Better index. So in Python, it's custom to use these comments that begin with so comments can begin either with hash or with 3 quotes, and it's customary to put these 3 quote comments, after function names to describe what the function does. Okay, it's very good practice to document what you're doing. So what I'm doing here is that I want an index that fishes out all data. So let's get all data. Okay, I say q is equal to db dboard, I think. This is a query that will fish out all the data. Okay, and then I can say farm is equal to SQL farm dot grid of q. And this will give me a default farm for this. Let me do it this way because I want to add return farm is equal to farm. So let's see what what SQL farm grid does if I don't do anything else. Okay. Now I need to copy and paste these. The index. Okay, I need to have an index 2 in order to exercise this code. Okay, so and I need to. I wonder if I need to edit it actually. And so rather than all this stuff, well, let's leave the button for the moment. But rather than all this stuff, I simply put a farm. Okay, so let's see what happens if I just do this. So I need to go to index 2. Internal error. Why? This is sad. Okay, return from, oh yeah, it's because I'm silly. So let me tell you one thing. When you return, you need to return a dictionary form. And let me also say that dict form is equal to form. It's the same as saying return form. So essentially, the dict thing, it's a sort of helper to build a dictionary. Okay, it's just syntactic sugar, and people like me like to use it because I don't know, I like more typing equals than typing all these quotes and quotes and columns. But that's actually the only difference. Okay, and I simply had forgotten the dict part. Okay, so now I try again. Fine, I close this. I try again. Wow. Okay, lots of stuff for free. So the content of the response of the query, that in this case gets all the records, is displayed as a table. Okay, the table contains all the fields that we specify except the ones that are not readable. So the ID is not there, no, but everything else is readable. A name, phone, email, category, date posted, message, and then we can view, we can edit, and we can delete. Wow, this is great. In a single blow. So let's look at some things. So for instance, we wouldn't want the message to be there, okay? Because the message can be very large, and it's harder to squeeze a very large message in a table. You see, if we click on view, this will give us, in a nice way, the presentation of one of these things. So we want people to click on view to read it all. And I don't want to put the message in each one of them. So how do we customize these so that it doesn't give us those pieces of information? Well, this SQL form grid takes many parameters. One is a list of fields that should be displayed in the main table. And I can say db bboard name, db bboard, what is that we want actually, sorry. We wanted the name, we wanted the phone. No, the phone is useless, right? I mean, unless you know if you want to buy it, what do you do with it? Actually, there's not so much in this that we may want. Date posted. Oh, and the db bboard category. I mean, it's a bit silly. I wouldn't really need a title as well, right? That I can write there. In fact, might as well add it here. Before the message, I add field, okay, title. It's so easy to add that, why not? Okay. Now, and in fact, then even the name is not so useful, right? I mean, what do you do with information that was posted by Luca rather than Helen? It's sort of, this is what you need. Okay, so suppose I give you these. How would this form look like if I now refresh it? Okay, I mean, the title is none because we didn't have it before. Okay, but this is how it would look like, and if we view it, it would give us the full information. Okay, now there is also a way to automatically add a record, so we don't need the add button before. We can just click there, and this will generate exactly the same form. And I can add a phone, I can add an email, I can add a title like shoes, and I like my shoes, whatever. Okay, it's kind of crazy, but this this gets added. So this is very nice and beautiful. Now, how to do? I'm wondering that I think I'll need to make homework 2 a bit harder because I'm explaining you so many things that I was supposed to ask you in the homework. But let me play with it a little bit more. So this is great, except for what? Except for the fact that you can now delete and edit any one of those posts. So, you know, this SQL form grid is nice because it gives you a lot of abilities, but it's not really, you know, the most tailored to your particular data access policy, right? So I often, you know, sometimes I leave the view button, but most often in my personal use, I find myself that I have to remove these edit and delete buttons because I just apply to any result of the query, but sometimes you view stuff that you're not able to touch, or you know, and so that doesn't work. So how do we solve that? Well, let's first eliminate the culprit buttons, okay? So I can say editable is equal to false. Delete, no, I think it's simply edit is equal to false. Delete is equal to false. Let's see if I get it right or wrong. No. Okay. Great. Help. How do I do that? So I go to the Web2Py book. Yes, where else? And SQL form.grid. Okay. The problem is that it gets a very large number of parameters. Okay, and all of these. Okay, it was editable and deletable. So that's what I need to use. Deletable and editable. Okay, so now if I go back there and I reload, oops. Okay, now I only have the view button. Okay, fine, but this doesn't really solve things. Okay, because now we cannot edit nor delete anymore. So this is not really very good, right? I mean, it only solves some of the problem. How do we do it? And the way we do it is this. So Web2Py enables us to define extra fields that go into this table. Okay, and it will place them left or right of the other fields. Unfortunately, there is a feature request that I think will be implemented in such a way that you can define arbitrarily the order of the fields. But so far, you know, there are the database originated fields which are these ones, and then on the left or right we can place some other fields. Okay, and what I want to do is that I want to place left or right, I don't care actually, these buttons that will generate the requests to delete or edit, you know, using the code that I've previously written. Essentially, I want to generate buttons that send me to the methods that I've already implemented in the you know, previous part of the class. So how do I do that? Well, I hope I remember, and if not, I'll look at the documentation a moment with you. But essentially, the way I do it is this. I say fields is equal to fields, because I don't want to, this statement here is already long enough. And now I say creates extra buttons. So fields is equal to a dictionary. So no, sorry, it's a list. It's a list, long list. And let me show you where it's documented, okay? Also because I don't remember. Where is it? Virtual fields, okay? No, where is it? Yes. Where is fields? No, sorry, it's not fields, it's links that I need. Okay. Okay, so this is how links works. It's a list of these dictionaries that tell me the header of the column and the body of the column. Okay, so now let's do it slowly. Okay, it's a list of dictionaries. Dict. Okay, header is equal to empty. Okay, body is equal, and the body is a function that takes as argument the row. Okay, so let me do it this: generate del button. Okay, dict header is equal to empty, body is equal to generate edit button. Okay, so you pass it some functions. Now we need to write these functions. Okay, so these functions need to generate the buttons if appropriate. So how do we write them? Def, notice that in Python you can define a function inside a function. Okay, so def generate del button. You're not surprised, you know, but I learned how to code in BASIC. You have to give me a break. So, so this gets a row. Okay, I can call it row. Actually, it's not true. I learned how to code on a TI-58, these old Texas instruments. But so this takes a row out of the database and generates the buttons from the row. Okay, because you know the button is row specific. So what do we have to do here? If we are logged in, we if the record is ours, we can delete it. Okay, so in code, sometimes I have to say if these return that and if these return this other thing. Okay, the way I always do it to avoid errors is this: button is equal to nothing. So the default case is the one in which the button is not there, and let's say return B. Okay, so I return the button that will be a void button. Okay, now if instead so now I have to check if of user ID, this is the ID of the current logged in user, and it's none if you're not logged in, is equal to row user ID. Okay, B is equal, now I can create a real button, because this means if I'm logged in, this means I'm logged in and the row belongs to me. Then I can say B is equal to A of, you know, what I wrote before, A of delete, okay, class is equal to btn, this will make it look like a button, okay, and the URL is equal to URL is what I wrote before, okay, index delete args is equal to row.id. Okay, this should work. Yeah, likely. And so I'm so confident, foolishly, that I cut and paste this code and just say, okay, this is really crappy code. Okay, I have to apologize. Normally, what I would do is write a single function that says generate private button, and I would tell it whether it's a delete button or it's a the edit button. Okay, so writing this duplicated code is just very bad practice, because then if you fix the bug on one side, you don't fix it on the other. So apologies, this is really bad, but I just want to be quick now. I've already started this way, so unfortunately, let me finish it this way. Okay, fine. Try to write better code than me. Okay, but so if I do this, cross your fingers. Yeah. Well, at least you learn how to debug. Return, blah, 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 blah. What happened? When you get one such a completely gobbledygook error, this means that the error probably happened in the view, not in the controller. Okay, so essentially I'm passing something broken to the view. Why am I passing something broken to the view? Fields is fields. This is broken, actually. This should have been links, no? We said it as well. It's just that I forgot to change it. You see why it's so useful to you? I mean, now I could remember by memory, but it's so useful to have a versioning, because sometimes the error you get is completely meaningless. Why? What am I getting now? Oh no, but this should work. Sorry? Ah, thank you. This is true, but you shouldn't have broken things, unfortunately. So this is unlikely to be the error, because this is taken by, you know, by faith, essentially. It will not tell me whether this is the wrong thing. Where is my error? Row has no attribute user ID, so it was actually telling me. Ah, okay. So this is a stupid error of mine, but look at it again. Row has no attribute user ID. This means that I'm essentially operating on a row that does not have the user ID. Why? Well, because I didn't tell it to fetch it, right? These are the fields that are displayed and fetched. So I have to do db bboard user ID. This user ID will not be displayed because I believe I defined it with readable is equal to false, but I need to at least put it in, otherwise the code breaks, okay? So let me try again. Yes, this works. Okay, so these are the buttons I defined. Now you can claim the styling is not perfect, but it works, okay? So now we know how to generate a grid with extra elements that we generate in any way we actually want. This is incredibly powerful. Now we can generate delete buttons on request, but we can also generate, you know, whatever other information. So you know, this kind of trick, I use it all the time in CloudGrader, for instance. When you use a CloudGrader interface, which is written in Web2Py, it's extremely handy, right? Imagine that. Let me give you another example. How do I actually store your reviews in CloudGrader? In CloudGrader, you will type a review, which is a big piece of text. One of the things I do is that I've learned never to put big information into databases, okay? So if you really want to do a system that scales and can get a lot of users, the way I use the database is this. In a MySQL database, or in a relational database, I only put the metadata. That means the information that tells me how each data relates to each other data. For example, I will put very short records that says, Luca reviewed this homework in this assignment, you know? And this is very short rows, very compact information, okay? But I don't put what you type, because if I do this, I bloat it. It's true that the Wikipedia started by putting even the text of the pages in the database, but they quickly went away from it, okay? Now Wikipedia very quickly decided to put in the database just an ID of where the page is stored, of where the text is stored, and store the text somewhere else. So Wikipedia runs on a very large MySQL database, actually, okay? So, and in CloudGrader, I do the same. So, you know, when you type a review, I take your review and I put it in the Google Data Store, which is a key values store, okay? This gives me a small key. It's like a number, basically, okay? And I put the small key in the field, okay? And what do I do when I generate a table with the reviews? Well, it's very easy. I use this links thing in which the link function tells me, get row.review, okay? Then look up the review in this table and return to me the nicely formatted review. No, so I can, if I want, you know, completely compute new data out of the data that is in the database. Now, to give you just a silly example, okay, let me try to figure out something, okay? So, for example, I can have another link that says dict header is equal to like summary or like whatever content or post, just to be full of fantasy. And the body is equal to shorten post, okay? And this shortened post is def shortened post of a row, okay? What I want is that I just want to give you the beginning of it, okay? So I say return row dot, how did I call it? I called it bb message, okay? Row dot bb message. And then in Python, I think I told you that if I want the characters from 0 to 10, I could do something like this, right? And I can also actually say, you know, these are the first 10 characters of the post, okay? To which I add dot, 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 okay? That's fine. Now, to avoid the previous error, now I have to be a little bit more careful, and I need to remember that that I need to fish out also db bboard bb message. So let's see what this does. It won't do the right thing, I can tell you, but it does almost the right thing. So if I reload this page, this is what. No. Yeah, it's raw. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, you see, I have this field twice now. And this is a bit bad, right? Because I don't want to have it twice. But the problem is that if I eliminate this field, then I don't have the information required to compute this one, right? So I seem to be in a catch-22. I want to read that message from the database to be able to display it, but if I read it, it displays the whole thing, and I just want a little bit of it. How do I get out of that? Well, there is a trick that the first time I saw it, I thought it was crazy, but it works this way. By the way, let me first put these above, okay, because I don't like it at the bottom. But these, so I can say that I don't want the BB message to be readable. Now, if I say it in tables, this will make it not readable wherever I try to access it, which is clearly not what I want to do. I only want to make it not readable here in the table itself, okay? So here I can say db bboard bb message readable is equal to false. If I say this, if I say this, oh, it's a stupid thing, is that there is no comma there because I changed the order. Okay, so now it works in the way I want. The only thing is that this post is black instead of blue, and this is because, you know, here you can sort. It lets you sort according to the category, but you know, this is a computed field, so it does not know how to sort according to that field. Now, there is a little bit of trouble, and this is a trouble that is difficult to solve, but since we have time, I just show you how to solve it. So the problem is this. This works absolutely great, but if I ask to view, what will happen? This. Okay? That the body of the post will not be here any longer, and this will end with dots. This is silly, okay? But maybe no, maybe actually I don't want to tell you how to solve this. It's a fairly advanced thing, and it should not happen to you too often. But essentially, or should I show you? Well, I don't know. I might as well, I guess. So I want a different behavior if you are on this page or if you are on this page. Okay. Essentially, in this page, I want to show you my summary. But if you are in view, I want to not to have these, but I want to have the usual information. How do I get two different behaviors? And, you know, hack warning, this is a hack. But see, the difference between this page and the other page is that here we have view, and then you see default index 2, and then we have this view and bboard. We have these two additional parameters in the URL. We have these two additional arguments. When we go to this index, we don't have any arguments. There is no slash after index 2. So to do a complete hack, but why not I do it? Let me, before doing crazy stuff is always better to. Okay. If I want to do that, I do this. Let me let me slowly modify this code. So I want to say something like this. If len of request args is equal to 0, and then I can say we are in the main index, okay? And then I say links append this link here, okay? So I can append it. So I add this link and I declare this to be non-readable, but only in the main page, not also in the pages that are generated below, okay? So this thing should work if I haven't shot myself in the foot in some funny way, okay? Let's see a moment. So now if I'm here, I still get this behavior with the post, but if I go into view, yes, it works. I see the whole thing. Basically, I'm hacking it so that I cause two different behaviors in the main view and in the detailed view. Okay. So the reason I go into these details about SQL form grid, I'm sorry, it's not a very elevated piece of conceptual knowledge that I sometimes pass to you. But this will be incredibly handy in a lot of your assignments. So it's useful to know how to manipulate these things, basically. You can go a long way by editing and mixing your content in this way. So this is basically what I wanted to do. I'd like to take questions, and I'll post this code. Don't leave immediately, actually. Ask hard questions or interesting questions on anything related to class, I guess. But yeah. Or, if there are parts that you didn't understand well, I can go over again. Yeah.
So the buttons generated by the grid,
Yes.
do those have their own functions that they generate too? Like we generated the delete and the edit function.
Yeah. So these view buttons and delete and edit generated, yeah, they have their own function. The SQL form.grid is actually a large amount of behavior that you include in your web page by including that. Yes.
They have nothing to do with our view function?
No. They lead to their own thing. You see, if I click here on view, it leads me to a URL that is unfortunately small. I don't think I can magnify it, but it's default index2 view bboard. So essentially, it goes to the same page, but with additional arguments. And this SQL form grid will process these additional arguments and know what to do with them and give you a form that looks different. It's a sort of monster, this SQL form.grid, because it's polymorphic, right? Is multiform, what I meant. That is, when you just land on the page with no arguments, it gives you the grid that displays. And by the way, it does pagination for you. That if you work in some other frameworks, you know how annoying it is to do pagination. Pagination means that if you have 1,000 posts, you just want to return the first 20 and then the next 20, etc., etc. And the SQL form.grid takes care for you of pagination. In fact, I can display it by doing just this. It's another example of how multiform it is. So if you I think you can say paginate is equal to 2, which is silly, but at least it will enable us to see that there is pagination. Okay, now I go back, and you see this is page 1, and this would be page 2. So essentially, this SQL form.grid reads the command line arguments and shows you a different form depending on those. The default is to show you the whole grid, maybe starting after some page. but if you click on a view or delete, it will actually do that action, okay? View is sometimes handy, but delete and edit, usually you don't want to let people just edit any row, and so you can do it by hand. Yeah?
When you display the form like this, is there a way to do exportable equals false?
Yes, yes, yes. I just don't remember it, but there is a list of export formats. I think in fact is a sort of a CSV is equal to false. It's in the documentation here. Something like CSV is equal to true, but you can put a CSV is equal to false. In fact, there used to be a terrible bug in CSV is equal to true. I don't know if they fixed it, but it used to be that if you define a field not readable, like for example, true grade or like secret number of this person, if you used exportable CSV is equal to true, it would export also those fields that were not supposed to be exported. So it was a pretty serious bug at some point. I think they fixed it, but I would double check. Yeah.
And then also, can you basically style that table with CSS to make it look like not like a table, like more presentable, or is it always going to look like a table?
Yes, you can style it like CSS. It will always look somewhat like a table, but you can make it look like a better table, not like a worse table. I think, but I'm not sure, that you might be able to get it out as divs. And if you get it out as divs, I haven't told you essentially what divs are, except over here, but essentially div is a generic rectangular container. So instead of having things spit out to you in a table with rows and columns, you can have it spit it out at you like a sequence of rectangles. And then with styling, you can actually place these rectangles in the places you want, okay? This is available for usual forms. I'm not sure it's available for these. I will, in another lecture that I will give you some basics about HTML that I haven't really given you very much so far, okay? But so the answer is yes, but only to some extent. And I can also tell you that the Web2Py designers are somewhat unhappy with this SQL form.grid, because it started small, it became widely useful, it bloated, and now they want to restructure it in a much better way. And I don't know if they're done restructuring it or not. I mean, I don't think they are done in this version, but they have a development branch in which they are thinking of redoing it. And so eventually they will give it a bit more modular rather than with this very long list of parameters. But that's what we have now. So other questions? So again, one point that I find totally crazy but works is this particular statement here. Okay, the reason I found it crazy is this, because used to other frameworks, I thought, wait, we are modifying a database definition just for this method. I mean, I was used to the fact that database definitions live in one place and you don't touch them, and then maybe you do something on top of those, no? The reason this works is that in Web2Py, there is no notion of static things. Web2Py will read the db.py, then it will read the tables.py, and tables.py contains, tables.py is this, no? So it contains all these definitions, and Web2Py will just read them in, and learn that some fields are visible and some are not. And when Web2Py then goes to read this line of code, well, it simply overwrites the previous setting, but there is no persistent definition of how the database looks like. Every request is executed independently from start to end. And every request would start by reading the database definition. So inside a request, you can modify the database definition as you like. Another crazy thing that you could do is this. You could, at the beginning of your code, say, and actually it's what it's done. Look at it. It's not crazy because it's done. But there is an if then else that defines two different databases. You can either be using this or that at the beginning, right? So this is executed at every request. If you happen to be on App Engine, you define the database in one way. If you are not on App Engine, you define the database in another way. Okay, this all works. It's all dynamic in Web2Py. In a sense, it's because these servers that serve the web requests, they don't have memory. It's not really that the process stays in memory from one to the next. I mean, in some sense, yes, but all this is read once, and then it's as if the server is again in a blank state. And when the next request comes, the DB object is created again, the connection to the database is created again, and the next request is processed again in a clean environment. Okay, so that's the way that it works. So in particular, you cannot do something like, suppose we have a global variable, and I set the global variable to a value in a function. Then you do the next web request. The global variable will not be set to the same value. Okay? Is this obvious to everyone? So every request is executed independently. You do not share execution space. Is this clear? So there is a question of, how do you share actual information from one session to the next? I mean, from one request to the next. Okay, that's a very good question, and we will do it next time. It's one of the things we will do later. Any other questions? Yeah?
You said earlier to post this example online, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it will be a Web2Py package that you can upload in your Web2Py and run it. With the data, actually. The data comes with the example, so it's kind of fun. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Is there any way to identify data types of a Python